All right, welcome into the latest edition of the second half draft show. A little bit of a late start this evening, but as the title suggests, I want to jump into a few 7 round team specific mock drafts. We're going to start right at the top of the draft order with the Las Vegas Raiders. We'll follow that up with the New York Jets and then wrap things up with the Arizona Cardinals. So, with that said, let's take a look at what the Raiders have done to this point in the new league year free agency. Of course, there's the Max Crosby trade that wasn't, unfortunately. Of course, everybody knows it's a foregone conclusion. First overall pick, Fernando Mendoza. But obviously, things have changed a bit since the advent of free agency. The Raiders were active. They're going through a bit of a transition, systemically, certainly offensively as well as defensively, and perhaps maybe even more significantly on the defensive side of the ball, moving away from a 43 defense to an odd man front. So let's take a quick look at what they've done via free agency as well as trades. We'll talk about the trades as well. All right, so here we are. And of course, Tyler Linderbaum was the crown jewel of this free agent class here for the Raiders. Of course, they're trying to improve a very poor offensive line from a season ago, really making some a significant um, investment here at the pivot. I think that goes a long way, not just in terms of bolstering your offensive line, but helping the young quarterback, right? In terms of getting into the right protection. Linderbaum, he can hold up, obviously, the anchor, so on and so forth, but certainly getting to the second level, I think you're going to see, 21 personnel. They brought in a fullback. I'm expecting big things from Ashton Jeanty, just considering the system that's going to be deployed there in Las Vegas. And of course, the addition of Linderbaum goes a long way. And then, of course, they went heavy on the defensive side of the ball, again, making that transition from a 43 defense to a 3-4. Kwity Paye, real physical edge, presence, Quay Walker, and Nakobe Dean. Now, the second level of the defense has been an area that the Raiders fans, I'm sure, have been frustrated with. They've been frustrated with over the years. Not enough playmaking, not enough consistency from that group. So pretty significant investment there in free agency at the second level of their defense. This is a really good class in terms of inside linebackers or off-ball linebackers for that matter. But the Raiders decided, you know what, we want some veterans that are still really in the prime of their career. Still got a lot of good football ahead of them. Jalen Naylor is a shrewd pickup. I think that was a solid pickup. He's demonstrated when given the opportunity to make plays. And you bring him in as a tertiary option in the passing game. I like that a bit. Eric Stokes played well. One of the few Raiders that stood out on that defense a season ago. He was rewarded with a long-term deal. They re-up with Malcolm Kuntz, who's demonstrated the ability to get to the passer. I mentioned, them employing a fullback and Connor Hayward. He's listed as a tight end, but he can play that H-back role, lead blocker role as well. Derek Young on a 1-year deal. And a couple other players here. I think currently Spencer Buford is penciled in at left guard. I think they can do better there. Certainly, DJ Glaze he competes. Don't get me wrong, he competes, but I think they can improve at right tackle. So I think left tackle, center, and right guard with Powers Johnson are in pretty good shape here with the Raiders. But I think there's a couple of spots along the offensive line that I'd like to bolster, and I want more weapons for Fernando Mendoza. And when I think about the defensive side of the ball, I imagine they'll move forward with Max Crosby. Perhaps not. Perhaps things change. That was a whole mess. I think the Ravens, may have pulled a fast one, unfortunately, on the Raiders front office. But I think also the Raiders need some depth. So I want pass rushers. I want guys who can obviously two gap along that down line, again, transitioning to an odd man front. But there's definitely some question marks in the secondary. That said, of course, they traded away Geno Smith, but I really like the addition of Teron Johnson, right? I thought that was a really shrewd move, bringing him in. And just a quick look at the depth chart. Let's zoom in a bit here. You can see in that orange yellowish color the new additions to the roster. Again, I think Naylor was a pretty shrewd pickup. Not a highly touted player necessarily, but is a fairly consistent contributor when given his opportunities. Again, I mentioned Linderbaum. That's really the focal point of this free agent class. Hayward at fullback. Buford, pencil him in. He can play guard. In a pinch, he can play tackle, but I think you can certainly improve there. I think it's maybe 2 out of the 5 offensive line positions are remain in question. Although I don't hate DJ Glaze. I think DJ Glaze, if you had to go into this season with DJ Glaze starting, that it could be worse. It could certainly be worse. And when you look at the defensive side of the ball, again, Kwity Paye, heavy investment at the second level of the defense. Max Crosby is a Raider for the time being. We'll see if that sticks. I think he'll be fine in the new system. And then again, the addition of Teron Johnson. Again, when I look at that secondary, I think they certainly can invest more heavily there. So we'll see how this all works out in our 7-round mock draft. Okay, and as I mentioned, really no no surprise here with this Las Vegas Raiders 7-round mock draft, 2026 mock draft. Fernando Mendoza is the first overall pick. I talked about it ad nauseum throughout the process as I became convinced, right? And again, I've given kudos previously, and I'll do so once again. Those who kind of entered summer scouting with Mendoza, as one of those upper echelon quarterbacks, hats off to you. I think perhaps I watched the wrong games while he was at Cal. I just wasn't terribly impressed based on what I saw. But the player he's developed into, the toughness, the leadership, there's a lot to like about Mendoza. There really is. That accuracy is going to play. That whole shot against Iowa just lives in my mind rent free. And like I said, when the situations were high leverage, when the pressure was on, when you had to make a play, Mendoza came through time and time again and led to a perfect season there at Indiana. So Fernando Mendoza, first overall, and then we wait. Ooh, I want to slow that down. That is entirely too fast. Let's slow that down a bit. Okay, I wasn't planning on moving up, but definitely want to see where players are landing. Ooh, I like the Ruben Bain second overall. I don't hate it. I know the Jets fans might feel differently about that, but I don't hate it at all. Reese third overall, Sonny Styles. So Jeremiah Love makes it to 5. Got Downs, Bailey, Maui Noah. That's an interesting one. If you're planning on playing Maui Noah at guard, I suppose. But I think they already have their tackles there with Banks and Fuaga. Unreal Freeland, 13th overall. Again, I know the Rams fans feel like they don't need a tackle because of the way Maury McClendon played. But he's in the last year of his deal. And then we get Blake Miller was the last list. So let's keep on going. We'll take it to 36. See how everything unfolds here. Peter Woods, last pick of the first round. Kristen Miller, Pregnon. 2 really good players at the top of the second round. Let's take a look around. Okay, so if we did want to invest at right tackle, we certainly could there with Ihanachor. I think Ihanachor is a really intriguing player. Hasn't been playing the position long. Is going to need some seasoning. Maybe you don't go that direction because it's going to be a little bit of a ramp up for him. But I think just in terms of his ceiling, it's immense. The movement skills, the power profile, is big time athlete. Big time athlete. The only thing, even from a technique perspective, I think the main thing that needs to be addressed, and I believe can be corrected, is his hand placement, his punch, right? Getting that locked in on a consistent basis. But otherwise, really impressed by what he does. Caleb Lomu is a left tackle by nature. Of course, you have Colton Miller there, but certainly I'm sure he would be willing to play right tackle and then become the heir apparent to Miller. I mentioned that secondary. There's Colton Hood sitting out there. I think they could definitely stand to take a corner here. I like some of these other names. There's a lot of good slot corners, and then you start thinking about some of the edge rushers, right? Again, they brought in Kwity Paye. They re-up with Michael Kuntz. You got your guy Crosby for the time being, but ultimately, what direction do you go in, right? And long term, what's it gonna look like? What's it gonna look like long term? What's going on, Mr. C? Shout out. It's on the Second Half Draft Show channel. It's on the Second Half Draft Show channel. Matter of fact, give me just a second, Mr. C. I will put that here in the chat in case to be helpful. 1 second here. There we go. Yes, I know we made the change and we haven't been consistent with the live stream, but We decoupled our live stream from the main Couch Potato General Manager channel because it was having an adverse effect on the algorithm, right? And that channel is designed for really standalone content, pre-recorded videos, and shorts. So wanted to effectively decouple. But there you go, Mr. C. Hopefully that helps. Okay. So I've gone through a couple of different permutations here as it relates to the direction we would go in with this particular selection. I'll make that a little bit bigger for you guys to see. I also like the idea because there's a lot of players that I like here. I also am open to the idea of trading down and adding some more draft capital. So we got the Ravens with the 45th overall pick, Minnesota with the 49th, and Carolina with the 51st. So if I could get, let's see what the Vikings are offering. I think I could certainly get the 45th and the 115. I'd like to get perhaps if I drop down a few more spots, could I get into that third round? That's the question. I can. I can get into the bottom of the third round. So then the question becomes, all right, who you passing up here? I mentioned Colton Hoods, some believe would be a first round pick. Brandon Cisse has been mentioned over there. Um, somebody might select the Ty Simpson, not necessarily concerned about that. I'm not. I like the names. I like the names. I think the one name that is drawing my attention here in particular is Colton Hood though, because I do feel like this is a team that needs to improve the secondary. Although there's quite a few corners that I like as well. You know what? Let's trade down. Let's trade down. I'm gonna take these Vikings. Oh, I'm gonna see if they're willing to part with the 82nd pick. First of all, doesn't hurt to try. And then we go from there. Oh, got it. All right, let's do it. Resume the draft. See what happens. There's Lomo, Chris Bell. Certainly could be a team interested in Bell. Ooh, that Gabe Akis hurts my heart a little bit. I think the Raiders certainly could be a team in the Chris Bell, sweepstakes. That size speed component. They don't really have that on their roster now. You could maybe think down, Tate Thornton, but he doesn't have the same size in terms of weight, in terms of physical strength that Bell has. We'll see how he takes to the offseason program, but certainly if you wanted to prioritize getting Mendoza another weapon, you could go the Chris Bell route. It's actually a great spot if they did not go as heavy as they did in free agency at inside linebacker, because I really love Jacob Rodriguez-Tate. You got Chris Johnson out there, whom I really like the movement skills. I like the ball skills. I think he needs to play with more physicality. That's my only real knock on him. Chris Brazel is you get Thornton Brazel. There's some similarities, but I think Brazel is a bit more polished. Really like Malachi Lawrence if you want to address that edge rush. With R. Mason Thomas coming off the board as well as Akis, I think Malachi Lawrence is really intriguing, albeit he may be better with his hand in the ground. Bryce Lance has really climbed here on the board. Igbinosin, Antonio Williams. A lot of good players out here, man. A lot of good edge rushers too. Let's look at the cornerback position. I love Keontae Scott, but he's a slot. Stooks is a slot. Igmanosin, Chris Johnson. I think Rivers can do it all. Let's go with Chris Johnson. Let's go with Chris Johnson. We're gonna stay out west with this particular pick. Again, I think he does a better job, or actually, willing to challenge receivers at the line of scrimmage. I think he can be a really good player at the next level. The like I said, he had a great 2025 campaign there at San Diego State. And all the movement skills are there. Again, the ball skills are there. The technique is certainly there, but need to improve his physicality. But otherwise, I think he checks most of the boxes. So let's go with Chris Johnson here. Okay, our next pick here towards the top of the third. There's Brazel, Halsey. Safety is another position we could potentially address. Igbenogson is still out there. I like him a lot at this point in the draft. But do you go with a Bryce Lance? Obviously, playing at the FCS level, but big time production, remarkable athlete. I like Jalen Kilgore a lot, Mr. C. I'm sure you checked out my video on the main channel, the Couch Potato General Manager channel, just kind of doing a synopsis on the Senior Bowl. He impressed me. He impressed me. That you don't typically get that size out of a nickelback. Um, yeah, I am definitely intrigued by Bryce Lance. Let's see what we got in terms of edge rush. Romello Height. Ooh, a lot of the edge rushes are off the board. Not ideal because this is a very good class for edge rushers. There's some intriguing names here, but quite a few of them just came off the board. Mm. Hindsight, man, needed to prioritize the edge rusher and then come back to corner. And then if I wanted to improve the tackle position, not just yet. Interior, Keelan Rutledge. I like Jalen Farmer too. Okay. Yeah, I think at this point for me, based on what we're doing defensively, because I love Grayson Halton, I think he should be a second round selection, is the receiver position. And what are you looking for? And I think I'm gonna roll the dice. I think I'm gonna roll the dice with Bryce Lance. I really like Antonio Williams, but he works predominantly out of the slot. I think we're decent there already. Of course, you got Brock Bowers working the middle of the field as it is. So I'm gonna go with Bryce Lance. I'm gonna roll the dice on this size speed combination that he possesses. And Antonio Williams with perhaps the very next selection. All right, so through three selections, including a trade down, we have Fernando Mendoza, of course, followed by Chris Johnson, and then we went with Bryce Lance, 67th overall. 82nd overall pick. A lot of good football players still out here, but what do I want to prioritize? There's our guy Jonah Coleman, Mr. C. Key Wheatley. Safety is an area that I would need to address as well at some point. Could go back to corner. I'm going to go with Romello Height, though. I think he's tailor made for this system. Older prospect, but I expect him to come in and contribute, be part of this pass rush rotation out the gate. And based on how this draft has unfolded, I am keeping Max Crosby. We're not trading Max Crosby, so Romello Heights the pick here, 82nd overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. All right, we're going to be busy on day 3 of the draft, right? We're going to be very, very busy. There's my guy Wheatley, unfortunately, coming off the board. Genesis Smith is playmaker, but he misses entirely too many tackles for my taste. Um, I like Stribling. I do like Stribling. I think he could certainly be added to the mix. Next pick is at 117. Go back to the offensive line. I did mention I wanted to perhaps bolster. Crownover is a very intriguing prospect. Got a chance to see him in Mobile, but I think there's some more work to be done. Brian Parker probably will play center at the next level. Um, I think the player that I like the most here probably is Billy Schrauth. I think I would let him compete at left guard. I would definitely let him compete at left guard. You brought in Spencer Buford, as I mentioned, from San Francisco, but by no means is that a foregone conclusion that he should be the guy. So let's go with Billy Schrauth right here. There's Crownover. I was thinking Corleone, Bud Clark went my next selection, but unfortunately, both went off the board. There's Michael Taff, Bishop Fitzgerald, BJ Payne. Those are some interesting names, but I can wait on them. Damn, no Bud Clark. I love Bud Clark. He should be a day 2 pick. There's Kilgore, Mr. C. There he is. And then you got the big corners. You got Ephesians Presok and Takario Davis from Washington. Julian Neal's another big one. Some good corners. I'm going to probably grab one of those guys here in a bit. Let's take a look at what we've done thus far. Mendoza, Johnson, Lance, Romello Height, Billy Schrauth. Anybody to back up Genty? Maybe not. Just Jolly's a good player. but we're good at tight end. Maybe down line. Let's take a look. Xavier Harris, Chris McKellen's more of a 3 technique. Tim Keenan, Demonte Capehart, they can be my nose, my 0 tech there. But maybe we go with Xavier Harris. Maybe we bolster things up front with Xavier Harris. So Nick Singleton got hurt in Mobile, and while he has all of the traits, the explosiveness, the speed, he plays with good physicality. He's not a good natural ball carrier. I think he needs to be in the right system. Now, Seattle may, Mr. C. I know you're a Hawk fan. I mean, that might be the appropriate system for him, but I think just all around back, give me Jonah Coleman over Nick Singleton for sure. Let's go with Xavier Harris. Let's add a big body up front so those new additions at the second level can flow to the football. Let's see what's going on here. There's McClellan, Bodicher, Callister, Brian Parker. Okay. All right. So Jude Bowery, listed as a tackle, might be better at guard. I don't think he has the athleticism necessary to live out at tackle. And I do want to add one. I do want to add a tackle. And I think my guy, I might have to do it now, though. I really like JC Davis. I think he can play guard or tackle. I feel PFF is entirely too low on him. Very impressed by him in Mobile. And certainly, what he's done in the Big Ten over his career has been pretty impressive as well. He's played a lot of good competition and has done more than hold his own. So I like him a lot. I also think this would be a great spot for Jacoby Lane too. Yeah, what have we done thus far? Shrouth. We went with Lance. We're betting on Lance, man. Betting on Bryce Lance. Again, big time production, explosiveness. Maybe a little raw. You might want to knock him for his competition, but I think there's some traits there that I want to, like I said, roll the dice on. If I move off of Lane, yeah, Josh Cameron, Kevin Coleman is a slot. Caleb Douglas can play outside. Cyrus Allen. Ooh, Cyrus Allen. Big time production, uncoverable in Mobile. I think we got to come away with Cyrus Allen. I know he's going to play the slot. There's some competition there, but I think he can beat out who's ever there. I think he's that good. Yeah. So let's start with JC Davis because again, I think he could actually compete for a starting position as early as 2026. And I feel better with him and Shrouth being part of that mix. And then I'm going to make a move here. To get Cyrus Allen. So go with JC Davis. And then let's pause it up. Let's see what the Eagles are willing to do some business with us. Yeah, I think he's this good. I think he's worth it. Let's do it. We'll give up that 6th round pick. Lane is still there too. Interestingly enough, we can go. But I think there may be some redundancy. I think there's some redundancy if we go with Jacoby Lane. Jacoby Lane has great body control. I just don't think he does a very good job of using his hands and his arms in terms of his release package. His release package needs work. I think good to great corners are going to erase him because he's not a blur like Lance. He doesn't have that type of top end speed. He doesn't play with that kind of physicality. But that said, I really do love, the way he tracks the football and his body control. So we could go in either direction. I don't want to necessarily kind of duplicate the type of body type, though, right? I'm looking for a different type of player, guy that's going to get open frequently. And like I said, Um, 12 TDs on 49 reception is quite impressive. Drop rate's only 2%. Drops kind of got lane a little bit. Let's go with Cyrus Allen. Let's go with Cyrus Allen. All right, and then we got a little bit of a wait here. So let's take a look. Take a quick look at what we've done thus far. I hit up Mobile quite a bit here. Johnson, Heights, Davis, Allen, all participants in Mobile. Of course, Mendoza leads the pack. Chris Johnson could very well be starting opposite. Names escaping. We talked about it. Just read up this year. Bryce Lance certainly has an opportunity to get quite a bit of playing time. Romello Height, you add him to our pass rush rotation. Billy Schrauth and JC Davis, I think both of them are competing to be in our starting lineup as early as 2026. Xavier Harris be part of that down the line rotation. And then I think Cyrus Allen is going to force his way onto the field when it's all said and done. Okay. See what we got here. Take a look at the safety position. I'm gonna go get my guy, man, Jacoby Thomas. That's what I'm gonna do. I think he's entirely too low here. Really put it together here in a full-time role there at Miami. Play that strong safety for you. Makes plays, big hits, makes plays on the football. Like him quite a bit. Go back to edge. Get the receivers out of there. Vincent Anthony Jr. is a player that I'm intrigued by. Yeah, I'm gonna go with my guy Jacoby though. Any other corners? TJ Hall, Monte Smith. Yeah, let's go with Jacoby. He's the best safety available. All right. One more pick here. Oh, some interesting names here towards the bottom. I think Oscar Delp is probably going to go a lot earlier than PFF thinks because of the physical profile, right? It's a pretty good tight end class, but I think he has a unique profile, albeit it just did not materialize into consistent production there at Georgia. Yes, I mean, phenomenal athlete, Mr. C, by all means. But you got frustrated with Kenneth Walker, perhaps bouncing things, not pressing the hole correctly. Singleton has legitimate vision issues, legitimate. But I'm willing to bet on those physical tools that he possesses, though, for sure. Interesting name. Robert Spears Jennings is an interesting one. I like Robert Henry Jr. Add him to the backfield. Roman Hemby. Some interesting names here. Devin Eastern, he flashed a bit in Mobile. Really interesting names. I feel good about what we did on the offensive line. Doubled up at receiver, got a safety, added a corner. You could very well go best player available here. But you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna bring in Harold Perkins Jr. as an understudy to Dean and Walker. I think the Raiders are gonna blitz. I think they're gonna blitz, and I think Perkins is at his best when he's moving forward. Certainly not the same player that we saw when he initially entered the collegiate ranks, but I'm going to give him a shot. I'm going to roll the dice on him at this point in the draft. So Harold Perkins Jr. is our final selection. Okay. That's the Las Vegas Raiders. We'll take a quick look back, recap it a bit. I think if I would have done anything differently, it may have been prioritize edge a little bit sooner, right? Particularly if the Raiders are still interested in moving Max Crosby. And again, I just think in this class you want to come away with some of those guys, one of those guys in the top 100. We did, maybe not my preferred player, but we did come away with one. Okay, so Mendoza, we traded out of the 36 hole, and you may have wanted to perhaps prioritize Lomu or Ihanachor at tackle. I certainly understand that. Decided to trade down to add third-round pick that allowed us to net Romello Height. We traded down, selected Chris Johnson. We're betting on the traits here with Bryce Lance and some really eye-popping production there at the FCS level. Billy Stroud, I think, is a really underappreciated interior offensive lineman in this class. Xavier Harris is obviously a massive frame. Add him to that odd man front, be stout at the point of attack and really usurp those blockers so that Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean can flow to the ball, as well as Harold Perkins Jr. there at the end. Select JC Davis. This is a top 100 player for me, right? I expect JC Davis. I think he belongs in day two, personally. I think he can play tackle or guard at the NFL level. So love the value that we got for him late there in the fourth. Wasn't convinced that Cyrus Allen would fall to us, so we traded a pair of day three picks, a fifth rounder and a late fifth rounder, early sixth rounder. May not have been necessary. We probably could have waited on it. When I traded up, wasn't expecting Jacoby Lane to be on the board, but he was there. But I prioritized Cyrus Allen, a little bit different body type, the way he wins, quickness in and out of his breaks, slot receiver, but a lot of crooked numbers put on the board when the ball goes in Cyrus Allen's direction. Added Jacoby Thomas to that secondary. I think if that's another area that I may have perhaps added another player, maybe a third defensive back here, because I really do think they need some depth. And then, as I mentioned, Harold Perkins Jr. So top to bottom, I like it. I don't love the edge and receiver selections. I think we probably could have done a little bit better there, but and I mean there with Lance and Romello Height. But Lance is a wild card. Lance is a wild card, and I think you know exactly what you're getting from Romello Height, right? As part of that pass rush rotation. So good draft. Maybe not a great one, but a good one, solid one. Okay. Let's go full screen once more, and I will work on getting the New York Jets teed up. And of course, the Jets have been very busy this offseason. They struggled mightily last year, really in terms of moving the football. This offensively, it was difficult to watch. Justin Fields. Justin Fields is who he is at this point until he proves otherwise. And I know they managed to get a late round pick trading him over to the Chiefs, or was it a pick swap, something along those lines. But Fields does not anticipate well. He has to see it, and he's slow to pull the trigger. I don't think that the first year play caller helped. It looks like they're going in the direction of who was it? Frank Wright. They're going in the direction of Frank Wright at offensive coordinator. So I think that's probably a move in the right direction. Of course, they traded with the Raiders to acquire Geno Smith. Full circle for Geno. That's where it all started for Geno. So I expect the ball to be pushed down the field a bit more frequently with a little bit more consistency. I think the Jets will field a fairly decent offensive line. Brees Hall gets further removed from his injury. They have an opportunity with 2 first-round picks to really bolster the offense and outfit a defense that's also going through a transition. They're changing their scheme defensively. So we'll get into the Jets draft here in just a second. Let's take a look. In the meantime, let's take a look at what they've done in free agency. They also traded to acquire T'Vondre Sweat. They traded Jermaine Johnson to the Tennessee Titans. Of course, he has experience with Robert Saleh, and they brought in T'Vondre Sweat. And I think if T'Vondre Sweat has his head on right, he could be phenomenal in the middle of that defense. Again, transitioning from an even man to an odd man front, that size, that ability to hold up at the point of attack, anchor, two gap, allows everybody else to flow to the football. So let's just take a quick look at their free agents thus far. I'll move down here in the bottom. And let's bring it in tight. All right. So just kind of trying to outfit things. And I actually think a lot of NFL teams did a good job of addressing their needs via free agency. Whether it's a new coaching staff, whether they're changing, schemes, whatever the case may be, they put themselves in a unique position as it relates to positioning themselves to select the best player available. Not to say that they have no needs entering the draft, but nothing so glaring that you just don't have bodies. You certainly have bodies in the areas that going into the new league year they needed to address. And I thought a lot of teams, including the Jets, did a good job of that. So you got Osai from the Bengals. He figures to be a significant part of what they do there defensively. They managed to get Demario Davis, which was interesting. I'm interested to hear more about that decision, and how they were able to net him. Of course, he started his career there, so maybe that has something to do with it. But great leader, older player, but still playing at a fairly high level. Remarkable leader, Kingsley Enagbare, again trying to round out those stand up 3-4 edge rushers. Dane Belton. They re-up with Cisco, Nashawn Wright. Of course, they moved off of Sauce Gardner. Luongo's a return man, and then they added some depth at offensive tackle. They already got the young guys, Fashanu, and my guy from Missouri is from last year, but they added some depth there. Perhaps one of them will play guard, Kel Walker and Xavier Newman Johnson. So very busy offseason, and you could see they have some premium draft capital. I think they have 4 picks in the top 44 selections, so they'll be busy early on. And they've really put themselves in a position to go best player available as far as I'm concerned. Okay, let's take a quick look at their depth chart as well. Where are we here? There you go, Jets. Tab. So this is what it's looking like tentatively. Adonai Mitchell, Garrett Wilson on the boundary, Isaiah Williams in the slot, Dylan Parham, whom they got from the Raiders, is penciled in at left guard. Elijah Vera Tucker, who struggled with injury, very good player, but struggled with injury. He's no longer there, so might be an area where we could certainly bolster things. But yeah, Membo, Titman, Myers, Fashanu is certainly solid to say the least. Hopefully, Taylor Mason can take a step here in year 2. As I mentioned, I think you're going to get better quarterback play. Maybe not anything to write home about, but certainly better quarterback play with Geno Smith. I mentioned Devondre said David Onyemata. I think that was another trade, if I'm not mistaken. He's a good player too. I like their down line. It says here base 4-3, but clearly they transitioned to a 3-4. Will McDonald's still out there. Demario, Sherwood, Cy Johnson, Nashawn Wright. And then, of course, the trade for Minka Fitzpatrick. There's another trade there that I think, this is a team that I don't believe had an INT last year or it was something along those lines. Don't believe they had an INT last year. They've added some ball hawks in the form of Nashawn Wright and Minka Fitzpatrick. And to then get Cisco back, I was a little surprised. I was surprised that were able to bring him back. I thought they were going to move on, but not bad considering the draft capital that they have. So let's get to it here. Let's get to it here. 7-round mock draft. Just a second. And here we go. All right. 7-round mock draft, 2026 mock draft for the New York Jets. Let's get it started. First of all, I'm going to actually remember to slow the speed down here. So this is the big question mark, right? This is the big question mark. What do you do at 2? Who do you go with, right? Arvell Reese is the favorite. He's clearly the favorite. And I get it. I understand it. It makes sense. I certainly can see a scenario where David Bailey or Ruben Bain are the selection here. I think I want Bain's hand in the ground more often than not, but certainly he can do the stand-up edge stuff as well. The way he transformed his body this past season, really impressive. I think Bailey certainly can. I know there's been a lot of talk about his lateral movement, but Bailey demonstrates the ability to get after the passer, and that's a big proponent of being able to be an edge rusher at the NFL level, right? He's not a liability, maybe not excellent in the run game, room for improvement, but he's not a complete liability in the run game. I think Bain is the best player among these 3. I think Bain is clearly the best player among these 3. But I do understand the Arvell Reese connection. I think the fact that he certainly can play off ball linebacker. You can put him in there next to Demario Davis, right? And be an understudy to him while obviously starting. But then you're in position where you can send him, you can blitz him from anywhere, right? You can get him mugged up in that A gap. You can send him off the edge because he has that physicality, he has that explosion. So I don't think you want to pigeonhole him in either regard. I think he's the type of player with his sideline to sideline quicks, speed, and like I said, that physicality. I think you want to use him in a myriad of ways. And given the transition that they're making here in New York, a bit of off-ball linebacker, maybe about 60%, 65, 70% of his snaps at off-ball linebacker, and then, give him an opportunity. I don't necessarily want to see him in coverage on obvious passing situations. He needs to be moving forward, he needs to be going after the quarterback. So let's go with Arvell Reese here to the New York Jets. Not considering a trade down here. Well, we know a fourth overall. Interesting. Finneman in the top 10. Wow. Well, ahead of Downs. That's a new one. Oh, did not expect Mansour Delane to make it to this point. I think it's an easy selection. They have a clear need at corner. It's an easy selection. I was thinking perhaps, you know, between Adonai Mitchell and Garrett Wilson, perhaps Adam Makai Lemon, right? Really be explosive on the offensive side of the ball. But he goes a couple picks ahead to the Baltimore Ravens. I love CJ Allen, but again, with Reese, I'm going to be playing him at off-ball linebacker and edge, so I feel good about that. It's Mansour Delane, and it's not particularly close here. He should be the first corner off the board, considering that Jamal McCoy hasn't done any testing to this point, I believe. I'm not sure that Tennessee's had their pro day yet, but certainly I anticipate Delane will be the first corner off the board. So getting him at 16th overall is terrific, and then of course he gets coached by very good corner in his own right during his time in there in Glenn. Jordan Tyson to Detroit, if I'm not mistaken. That's intriguing one. Let's see. Okay, so we have the first pick in the second round, and this typically is a highly coveted pick. There's a lot of teams that will be jockeying for an opportunity to move up here, right? Whether it be a situation where I'm not anticipating it, but a situation where perhaps team wants to move up for Ty Simpson. Um, Peter Woods, man, it's telling you, man. I think Peter Woods would be a terrific 5 tech. Don't want him playing at the nose. That's why we got Devondre Sweat, but he'd be a really good 5 tech. Omar Cooper could be devastating in the slots. I mentioned the guard position, right? That left guard position is a question mark. Emmanuel Pregnon probably is plug and play. I like Kristen Miller just as much as I like Peter Woods, frankly. You got Lee Hunter there. If you missed out on either of those two, you could go with Lee Hunter. Yeah, man. Definitely quite a few direct. You could even decide to go with Ty Simpson at this point. I think Ty Simpson is reasonable. It is worth considering if he makes it this way. I don't see it playing out that way, but certainly you could consider going in that direction as well. Let's see what offers we're getting. Okay, Tennessee at 35. What did Tennessee do in the first round? They went with Maui Noah. Okay, trying to protect Cam Ward. I don't think Omar Cooper gets past Tennessee, so got to keep that in mind. And then we'd be trading down to 39 at that point. I don't know that I want to do that. So if we didn't go with Omar Cooper, we could potentially pivot to Casey Concepcion, and of course Chris Bell is there as well. Let's see what the Titans are willing to part with. Yeah, definitely too much. Yeah, I don't think that's worth it. Let me see what Cleveland's just saying, just for the sake of it. Yeah. I'm not getting an offer I love here. No, I'm not getting, a sweet deal as far as I can tell. Kansas City, again, that's probably too steep. And then once you get to the Bucks, I think that's dropping down too far. I'm gonna go because we're sitting there at 44 as well. I'm gonna go with Omar Cooper, man. I think I think he's going to be a problem in this offense. You know what I mean? He's going to see a ton of single coverage, certainly working out of the slot. But you got to respect Garrett Wilson. I think Adonai Mitchell is very talented in his own right. Just needs to be more consistent. Let's go with Omar Cooper. We're thinking Makai Lemon in the first round. Didn't work out that way. You know, we get a great um, consolation prize in the form of Omar Cooper. All right. Peter Woods was there for a while. I think Christian Miller actually went ahead of him, which makes sense. The Titans didn't even get a shot because the Cardinals went with Concepcion. I am hard pressed not to good players on the board, man. I got to tell you, this is a sweet spot in the draft. Um, you could grab Chris Bell and move Garrett Wilson into the slot, right? Or you could have Chris Bell and Adonai Mitchell rotate. I think that I wouldn't rule that out. I think if I didn't go Reese and I went with pure edge and maybe David Bailey, I think Jacob Rodriguez makes a ton of sense here too. If you wanted to continue to tackle the edge position, R. Mason Thomas, Gabe Akis, quite a few of those guys are out there. Of course, you know, being who I am, I have to explore what's there available in the form of a trade. Let's see. Certainly going to be too much. Lopsided. Add the 99th, drop down 9 spots, add the 99th. I like D'Angelo Pons a lot there. That could really, really solidify our secondary. Well, we've done this far. Reese, Delane, Cooper. Ooh, tough leaving Pons. Not going with Pons here. But how much do I value that 99th overall? We don't have a third round pick currently. How much do I value it? Double check one thing here. Bear with me. It's Jarvis Brownlee Jr., whom they acquired from Tennessee in a trade in season, if I'm not mistaken. I think Pons could beat him out. Although Brownlee Jr. is, I like him. I don't dislike him, but I think Pons can beat him out. Um, hmm. It really comes down to who you might be targeting with the 99th overall pick because you're definitely going to miss out on Pons. Um, we got Cooper already. We got Delane. That guard position. Besantis, Rutledge. Then it starts to get a little interesting. Safety. Policy is there, although they've addressed that quite a bit. You know, I'm gonna go with Pons. I'm gonna go with Pons, man. I think he's a difference maker. I think he's a difference maker, and now I'm loving the secondary. What they did via trade, via free agency, on top of Mansour Delane and D'Angelo Pons. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. Let's do it. All right, got a bit of a wait. Got a bit of wait here. Our next selection isn't until the 102nd overall pick. And with 5 remaining picks, I'm not trading up. I'm not trading up. I'm going to let the draft unfold a little bit. We're probably going to miss out on some of those edges I might be intrigued by, but there's some names, especially when you start talking about pass rush specialists that I think are certainly intriguing. One just came off the board in Kieran Crawford. Really, my first exposure to him was in Mobile, and is a player that hasn't played the game long. I think his first year of football was his senior year in high school, if I'm not mistaken. So, big time athlete, a lot of room for growth there with Kieran Crawford. Okay, uh, hell, we could go Nussmeyer here, man. Right? When you start talking about the quarterbacks in this class, guys that are born to be quarterbacks, coach's son, you get concerned with some of the decision making at times, but I think you could do worse at this point. I think you can certainly do worse. Drew Aller's there as well. Um, I think going into the season, I probably was higher on Drew Aller than Nussmeier. I thought going into the season, of course, he had the unfortunate injury. It's with Aller, it's some of the inaccuracy that bugs me. Nussmeier is the decision making, so they're both flawed prospects. Let's make no mistake about that. Definitely flawed prospects. Um, does trading down make any sense at this point? I don't know that it does. But I might take a quarterback here. Might take a quarterback. Let's take the offensive line. Crowder, Crownover, good at tackle. There's my guy Shrouth again. DJ Campbell, Jeremiah Wright. Yeah, I think at the top of the fourth round, a very common pick for me is going to be Billy Shrouth. I think he's underappreciated. We definitely miss out on the quarterback though under those circumstances. So let's go with Nussmeier. Let's go with Nussmeier. Got benched this year, but dealt with injury as well. Dealt with injury as well. Coaching situation wasn't ideal. Perhaps getting him in, this NFL program, considering his background, and certainly some impressive tape mixed in with some head scratching throws in there as well. So we'll roll the dice with Nussmeier at this point. So here we are, final pick in the fourth round, and there's my guy JC Davis again. Nadame Tucker could certainly get after the quarterback. Older rookie, but he knows how to get to the quarterback, as does Max Llewellyn. There's that Cyrus Allen character again, like him. Demonte Capehart. Take a look. So Arvell Reese, second overall, really becoming the favorite for that particular selection. Master Delane slides. I think you can go Gerard McCoy here too if he's available. I would be fine, assuming everything checks out. Pro day, he got a clean bill of health coming out of the combine, but I think you want to see him move. Omar Cooper slides a little bit here as he's kind of forced his way into that first round conversation. D'Angelo Pons is nails. And then Garrett Nussmeier there in the fourth. So I think we've addressed the majority of our issues. Listen, Mr. C. Me too. Me too. I'm warming up to the idea of Arvell Reese, but Bain to me, when you talk about Bain, Reese, and David Bailey, Bain is the best football player, right? And I think teams at times, setting aside the arm measurements, we'll see what that looks like, Miami Pro Day and everything. Setting aside that part of it, I think teams at times perhaps force the issue as it relates to schematic fit. Well, would he be best standing up or best hand in the ground? I just think you want to. I think he's just such a good football player, and like I said, the work he did from one season to the next, really transforming his body, becoming a real threat to bend that edge. Bain usually, early on in his career, it was hand usage, it was motor, it was power, right? Bain is starting to threaten you with speed and bend and agility as well, and all of the power profile remains intact. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, Mr. C. I'm not mad at it at all. Let's see here. Do we go with a big nose as well? I think tight end. I got it. Safety, Michael Taff. Or I like Caleb Illems or press me at Mobile. I don't love where I'm picking right now. I think, again, a favorite of mine is JC Davis. Max Llewellyn. Max Llewellyn intrigues me, as does Nadame Tucker. They can get after the passer. They can definitely get after the passer. Let's go with Nadame Tucker. Back into the draft, see how it unfolds. Charles Demings, yes, JC Davis. That's a good pick for the Browns. Llewellyn to the Bucks. A few running backs off the board. Caleb Illems or. Okay. back part of the 5th round, and some intriguing names here. I like Jamari Taylor, good all-around skill set there at running back. Josh Cuevas really demonstrated some movement ability. He had a strong Senior Bowl showing. And Julian Neal intrigues me quite a bit. Longer limbed corner, a lot of press man from him. I think he's interesting. You got Kalen Black, Coogan, Quintavious Hutchinson, another pass rusher that I like. Let's go with Julian Neal. Yeah, we're gonna get our hands on the football this year for sure. With 3 corners. All right, we're gonna crowdsource it on the back end of this defense. Okay, we got 2 7th-round picks, 228 as well as 242. Reese, Delane, Cooper, Pons, Nussmeyer, Tucker, Julian, Neal. Brailsford. There's Hemby. It's an Anthony. Let's go on the offensive line. Could always use some depth there. Add a pivot to the mix. Rayshaw Faison is kind of interesting. Got a chance to see him in Mobile as well. I think he's interesting, but I don't love these options. Maybe Hemby, that last pick. Let's go with Parker Brailsford. Add a body there in the interior of the interior of the offensive line. Hemby went 1 pick before my selection. Anthony had a really good showing in Mobile. Lewis Bond flashed a bit. Malik Benson is a guy that I think is picking up a lot of steam. I think when PFF's rankings are all over, they're probably going to adjust for what they're hearing from the NFL scouts. He's a name to keep in mind. Center. We never got that guard. Maybe an oversight on my part. Michael Morris. I'm gonna go with Ethan Aninanwa. I thought he was a little up and down in Mobile, but I think his frame and his power profile, if he can get his pad level straightened out, his hand placement worked on a bit, I think he could be a decent player at the NFL level. So we'll go with Ethan Aninanwa to add some more depth to this offensive line. Yeah, I think that might be one of the things I did different. One fewer corner, address that interior offensive line. It was just a quarterback situation. And the Jets, I believe they have multiple first round picks. They may decide, you know what, we're just going to punt on that. We're just going to add as many good football players as we possibly can. And we're not going to worry about bringing in a young quarterback and seeing if they can develop, see if we have something there. Probably just, use that on a guy that they think could be a starter in a year or two. And like I said, if had I gone in a different direction, with the 103rd overall pick, it would have been Billy Stroud, the guard out of Notre Dame, who I think, like I said, could compete for a starting role in 2026. That's not the case with Oninanwa, right? I think he needs some developing. So, quick recap: Arvell Reese, Mansour Delane, fell to us. Omar Cooper. I think I really like the trio of receivers that the Jets are fielding now, especially if you can get Mason Taylor at tight end to take a step. D'Angelo Pons. I think between Delane and Pons, I probably didn't need to address the secondary again. That's tough. That's tough. I mentioned Nussmeyer, Tucker to be part of your pass rush rotation. I like Julian Neal though. I really do. I think he offers a unique frame and quality man press skill set. And then we added some depth to the offensive line in the 7th round. So that's the New York Jets 7th-round mock draft. Which takes us to our final mock draft of the evening, and that will be for Dana's Arizona Cardinals. Now, I'm going to do the same exercise that I've done thus far. We're going to take a look at their free agency acquisitions to this point, peek at their depth chart as a result of what's transpired here in the new league year, and then we'll get into a mock draft for the Arizona Cardinals. So bear with me just a second here. All right, so here we go. All right, so the Cardinals, they've made a lot of smaller moves, and I think that certainly is a result of them new regime and of course the trade of Kyler Murray, right? The or rather the release of Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, um, the move of Kyler Murray represents an exorbitant amount of dead cap, right? I think had they decided to make that move next year, it'd have been a little bit more palatable. But they ripped the band-aid off. They decided to rip the band-aid off. I think they're committed to this rebuild. Jacoby Brissett played very well all things considered. And I anticipate he'll be the starter day one here in 2026. They did add Isaac Suomalu, who has a lengthy history of being a quality interior offensive lineman. He should plug and play in the interior of that offensive line. They do have a fairly significant need at right tackle, though. Although I read somewhere they brought no Jonah Williams at edge, not Jonah Williams at tackle. So they didn't re-up with Jonah Williams at tackle. So that remains a glaring need. Tyler Algier, they actually re-upped with you can see Zonovan Knight there. I thought James Conner was back. Let me double check that, but I thought they brought James Conner, who is an older back coming off of a fairly significant injury and has a long injury history. So it surprised me a little bit. It surprised me a little bit that they decided to go that route, but they did. It appears that they did or retain James Conner. I have to double check the details on that particular contract, but got James Conner, you got Tyler Algier, who spelled Bijan Robinson, was effective when given an opportunity. Roy Lopez to help out that down line. Of course, they moved off of who was it? It was they move off of Dalvin Tomlinson. They Dalvin Tomlinson, I believe, is with the Chargers now. Kendrick Bourne, I think that's a shrewd addition, right? $5 million average. I think that's a good pickup. Good pickup. Marvin Harrison dealt with the injury. Of course, Michael Wilson took full advantage of that, but he himself has dealt with injury. Of course, you have Trey McBride there. So I like that trio of receivers. Jack Gibbons, Elijah Wilkinson. Again, that's kind of a depth piece. Minshew to back up Brissett. Wingard. Again, some small moves here. Not a whole lot of guaranteed money involved. Guys that could potentially get cut or serve as depth pieces throughout the offseason here. Okay, so let's take a look at their depth chart. And as I mentioned, I kind of like what they have out there at receiver. And Jacoby Brissett, he demonstrated that he's gonna push the football down the field. Gonna push it down the field. So I'm anticipating some fairly significant production in the air in Arizona this year. The offensive line is a big question mark. Again, I mentioned Elijah Wilkinson. I think he's a depth piece. I don't know that you necessarily want him starting there at right tackle. Left to right is Paris Johnson. Isaac Suomalo again brought him in free agency. That was probably their big free agent acquisition. Frode Holt, Isaiah Adams, player that we liked coming out of Illinois. He's plugs in at right guard. And then, as I mentioned, pretty significant need there at right tackle. Algiers penciled in as the starter, but then you have Connor there, Trey Benson coming off injury. They re-up with Bam Knight. They like Bam Knight, kind of. So that's your offense. Defensively, we should see a full complement of Walter Nolan. They did decide to go with Roy Lopez and brought in Andrew Billings to be that nose up front. They need more pass rush. They need more pass rush. Evan Collins, I think, is at the end of his contract. Baron Browning, is inconsistent. I think he flashes from time to time, but certainly inconsistent. BJ Ojulari struggled with injury. You got Josh Sweat. That's pretty much where you're getting your pass rush from, right? The down linemen in Walter Nolan and Darius Robinson, perhaps in a different scheme might be able to affect the quarterback a bit more consistent. Albeit, I think Walter Nolan is going to do a good job regardless. We'll see about Darius Robinson. I'm expecting more from him. I think you got your young defensive backs for the most part in place, though, right? Buda Baker, Emerson are your safeties, Will Johnson, Garrett Williams, and then you got Denzel Burke here at the right corner. Um, could stand to improve that, but certainly, I think that's probably the strength of the Cardinals defense is their secondary at this juncture. In terms of upside, I won't necessarily say that in terms of actual performance, but certainly in terms of upside. Okay, let's jump into excuse me, go full screen here. All right, Arizona Cardinals 2026 7-round mock draft, and let's get it started. Again, Mendoza will be the pick first overall, followed by Ruben Bain, Mr. C. Ruben Bain, and like I said, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it. In fact, had Bain been available at 3, I would have taken him. Now, I think, generally speaking, you would anticipate Arvell Reese or David Bailey here, but there is a fairly significant need at offensive tackle. I think there's a fairly significant need at offensive tackle. Do you trade with the Chiefs? No, you don't. I don't necessarily want to trade down all the way to 10, albeit I'm sure I can get a first round pick next year plus. Yeah, I don't want to do that though. If I trade with the Chiefs, what are they willing to give me this year is the question. Do you take 9 and 29 from Kansas City if you're the Cardinals? Right? I think the Chiefs certainly will take a pass rusher here. You may have an outside chance at Bailey, but he probably doesn't get past the Commanders. So if you move off that, it's really a matter of you leaning in on the depth at edge in this class. And oh, by the way, as I mentioned, you have a glaring need at offensive tackle, right? So if you prioritize the tackle position, you could go with Maui Noah right here. I think he's the best offensive lineman in this class. Or you can trade down, add draft capital, and proceed from there. So I have not done any mock drafts for the Arizona Cardinals to this point, other than full 32 team mock drafts. And typically I'm taking Maui Noah here, or I'm taking one of those edge rushers I mentioned. I do want to actually trade down. I think adding a first round pick from the Chiefs probably in 2027 doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I'll take their 2 first this year and see what else I can get my grubby hands on. I can get their 3rd. They wouldn't do it. They have too many they have too many needs. But what's life without a little whimsy? Right, Mr. C? I'll take your 3rd in 2027 as well. Really going for the jugular here. Okay. I said don't trade with the Chiefs, but I did it. I did it anyway. So let's see what the Chiefs do here. David Bailey, naturally. Reese goes 5th overall. Maui Noah 6 to the Browns, which puts us in an interesting position. You still got all of the other tackles on the board. Mansour Delane, I mentioned the cornerback position. I definitely think Delane would be an improvement to Denzel Burke, no question in my mind. And you have Sonny Styles. You got Sonny Styles. I think the second level defense could certainly, stand to improve, stand to add some athleticism and playmaking ability there. Dallas wants to move up. The question is, what are you willing to part with, Dallas? They just added this 92 pick, and I don't want it. And then Detroit is the next team that's willing to trade. No, I don't think I want to do that. Let's go with. I love the depth of this class at linebacker. I really do, but Hard to argue with what Sonny Styles has put together this year. Trade down. CJ Allen will still be there. 2 trades down. Can you do it, Mississippi? Can you do 2 trade downs? Right. I'm sure Cardinals fans' heads have already exploded because they didn't get Bain, they didn't get Bailey, they didn't get Reese or Maui Noah. I'm sure their heads is exploding, and now I'm talking about trading down again. But I am talking about trading down again. I like to have fun with it. Perhaps a little unrealistic, but I like to have fun with it. Um, let's go with Sunny Styles. Let's go with Sunny Styles. Let's go with Sunny Styles. I think they can definitely stand to bolster second level of defense. And Mansour is certainly within play here as well. We'll go with Sunny. There's Adora Cooper, Howell, Blake Miller. Johanna Chor finds his way into the first round. So we got Caden Proctor, excuse me. Still got a corner out there if we want to go that direction. We have the 34th overall pick as well. So when we talk about offensive tackle, it's Proctor and Lomu. Both are left tackles by trade, but like I said, with Paris Johnson in place, somebody's gonna have to play it right. Mm, do I just round out that tackle position one time here and then come back to corner because you got some good ones. There's no question about it. There's some good ones here. And I know there are going to be a few teams interested in trading up to that 34 spot. There's also the matter of quarterback. Do we want to go that direction? I did not add an additional first rounder in 2027, so that's something you may want to consider as well. We're uniquely positioned to go with Ty Simpson here, and I think for my money, I think Ty Simpson actually makes quite a bit of sense for the Cardinals. Right? You don't have to start him right away. You have Brissett on a very team-friendly deal, albeit 1 year. I probably would tack on a year, frankly. The way Brissett played last year, I'd probably tack on a year there. Have him under contract for 2 years. You bring Ty Simpson in, you have the makings of a quality receiving core for sure. Those options at wideout on top of Trey McBride are impressive. You can continue to build that backfield and solve for right tackle, perhaps with the 34th overall pick. You get the benefit of the 5th-year option with Simpson under these circumstances. I think I'm talking to myself into it. I don't love Ty Simpson. I don't like how he necessarily plays under pressure. I think there's too much of a precipitous drop off. Every quarterback struggles with pressure to a degree, but in the case of Simpson, it's pretty pronounced. But I think at this point, and playing in a dome, I think also works well for Ty Simpson. So I'm going to go in that direction. I'm going to go with Ty Simpson here. There's Terrell Proctor and Lomu is the pick. Stick him there at right tackle. Looks like the Texans want to move up. They probably want to move up for Lomu. So no, thank you, sir. Let's go get our offensive tackle here. A lot of running in Utah's offense for sure, for sure. But I think Lomu is every bit as good as Spencer Fano in terms of pass protection, perhaps even better. Um, there's work to be done there. I'm not suggesting that he's a can't miss prospect. There's work to be done there, but I think I think good value there, 34th overall for Caleb Lomu. Okay, I just want to see what has transpired. Raiders went Peter Woods, followed by Lee Hunter, Chris Miller. So these interior defense, oh, Banks made it all the way to 39th overall. It was a run there along the defensive line. Interesting. To resume the draft. Pregnon. Next pick is at the top of the third round. And like I said, there's a lot of players that I like between like 40 and 70. A lot of players that I really like. I really like them. I'm looking at a couple here. Got Jennings Dunker at left guard position. Who's sitting? I got to remind myself who's sitting at left guard. Cardinals. Who's sitting at left guard here? Oh, Suamalo. What am I thinking? That's their prize possession via free agency. Okay. I mentioned I like the receiving core, but I really like Antonio Williams as well. I really like him too. Igbenogsen's intriguing here. I mentioned improving upon Denzel Burke. We go back to Ohio State to do so, potentially. Edge rusher. Mellow height. Yeah, this is a team that really struggled to affect the quarterback. So again, I understand if Cardinals fans' heads are exploding based on what I've done thus far. I certainly understand that, but I think that additional first round pick here gives you the flexibility to add Ty Simpson. So I think that softens the blow, perhaps. Do I want to go Romello Height? I don't know that I want to go Romello Height. Got the 74th overall pick. That those edges to start flying off the board. Joseph's more. Akis, yeah. Should have traded up for Akis. I like him a lot. He should be top half of the second round. Dennis Sutton as well. Yeah. Big time run there at edge in the second round. That hurts. I gotta tell you, I really like Antonio Williams. I talked this receiving room up as well, but I feel compelled. I feel compelled to add Antonio Williams to the mix. He can compete with Kendrick Bourne for that slot role or that third option among the receivers. Let's go Antonio Williams here. Okay, Benosin, Max Clare. Love Kalui. I don't think he fits this scheme very well, being that he's a bit undersized, but love Kalui. This is one that I have question marks about. Anthony Hill Jr. I don't think he's going to be on the board this late. I wonder why PFF is so low on him. I'm not sure why they are as low on him as in the industry. I think they're the lowest on him, if I'm not mistaken. We went with Styles. This is a very good off-ball linebacker class. Right now, you got Cody Simon and Mac Wilson. I'm gonna go with Anthony Hill Jr. I'm gonna add him. We're gonna do a facelift on the second level of our defense here. It's Khalil Lennon with the Chargers. Yeah, a lot of teams, are in that nickel. So I get that. I get that to a certain extent. Looky here, Mr. C. Jonah Coleman sitting there for us. Let's see what the edge looks like. Mikael Kamara. Yeah. Yeah, Cardinals fans are going to hate this one because I didn't get that edge early on. That's true. I didn't get that edge early on. I'm going with Jonah Coleman. I like me a Jonah Coleman, albeit Markel Bell's there too. But with Loma Winto, we're good. Let's go with Jonah Coleman here. Not sure what kind of player we're going to get back with Connor. They seemingly are confident in him in terms of what he will be able to bring to the table. Yeah, as I think about it, I like the idea of trading down, but I don't know that I would trade down as far as ninth overall. Again, hindsight being 2020, I think you got to come away. If not Bain, Bailey, Reese, it's got to be Mesidor. It's got to be T.J. Parker. It's got to be that collection that you have perhaps in the second round. I think even that the Cardinals fans will be like, look, we want to we don't want to bet on potential here. We want proven commodities, right? And I think in terms of getting after the passer, the guys that do it best are best at it are Bain and Bailey. So I certainly understand with Bain off the board, Bailey third overall makes a lot of sense. Okay, few more picks here. Take a look at what we've done thus far. Sonny Styles, Ty Simpson, Caleb Lomu, Antonio Williams, Anthony Hill Jr., Jonah Coleman. All players that I like. Again, Simpson, I detailed my thought process there. That's to me when you start to have that conversation towards the end of the first round. Worked out that well after the trade with KC. Um, I think I think you gotta add somebody who can affect the passer. And I like Quintavious Hutchins. I know there are people who like Caden Curry. Um, I Curry's okay. Curry's okay. Curry put up big numbers, but I don't know that it's going to translate to the next level. He kind of reminds me of Jack Sawyer to a certain degree, and I don't see those guys as as part of a rotation. Sure, sure, right. Don't hate it. I think the way Hutchins moves is unique. Watching him in Mobile, seeing him live, the ability to like just force offensive tackles to whiff. When we talk about guys who are going to be playing on Sundays, they struggle to stay in front of Hutchins the way he moves. I don't think Curry's technique or power profile that bull rush is going to really challenge tackles the way it did at the collegiate level. So I'm gonna go with Quintavious Hutchins here, but definitely light on edge rush for the Cardinals. The Cardinals were, I think, tied for the least amount of sacks in the NFL, and we didn't address edge rush until the fifth round. So definitely got to rethink that approach. Okay. At a corner, I don't think so. I like Hezekiah Masses. I think he's a good player. As I mentioned, Jamari Taylor in one of the previous seven round mock drafts. I like him too. Let's go with Masses here and then see what's available for our final selection. I gotta go out west sometimes. You feel me, Mr. C? We gotta go out west sometimes. Looking at Bryson Eason here, big body up front. Again, I mentioned Dalvin Thompson's gone. They brought in a couple of free agents, but I think Eason could compete with those guys as well. Just going Brian Eason, Bryson Eason, excuse me. So yeah, as I look at these selections, it's there's a lot of names to be excited about. Certainly, I think both Sonny Styles and Anthony Hill could be your day one starters. Although you don't generally want multiple rookie linebackers starting, um, they're going to add a lot of athleticism and playmaking ability to the second level of the defense. You know, um, I like Antonio Williams a lot. Like I mentioned, Kendrick Bourne, you probably could go in a different direction, but I didn't love the edge rushers that were available at that point. There was a huge run there between like 40 and 64. If Deny Dennis Sutton's there, I go with him. If Akis is there, I go with him. Joshua Joseph from Tennessee, any number of edges I would have selected. Then I would have felt a lot better about this draft class. But I like Antonio Williams. I just decided to go with a good football player there. Again, Anthony Hill Jr. probably won't be there as late as PFF suggests, but certainly felt, needed to stop the slide. Jonah Coleman, again, you don't necessarily know what we're going to get from James Conner. I've never been a big Trey Benson fan. He's coming off on yet another knee injury or lower leg injury. Um, you can see the F with Quintavious Hutchins. That's probably because of his rank, his overall rank as a player relative to where he was picked. But he can definitely get after the passer. Very, very good movement skills. I was thoroughly impressed because he faced some quality offensive tackles, including Hanachor, Markel Bell, Austin Barber, J.C. Davis, as I mentioned earlier. He faced quite a few guys that, again, will be playing on Sundays and made them look silly at times because of his movement ability. Um, Drew Los Altoids, man, I had to reach out to Drew just to make sure he was still above ground, man. And he did confirm he was above ground, man. But yeah, I think we will probably won't see the guys much here for the balance of this particular class. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because this has not been our best effort. I'm looking forward to getting after it in 2027. Really, my thought process is already there. So we're going to work on these 7-round mock drafts. I'll probably put another good 3 or 4 round mock draft together for all 32 teams and then turning the page on 2026 for sure. I like Ezekiel Masses, impressive player, one of Mississippi's guys, I believe. And then Bryson Easton, again, big body up front to help with that transition, that odd man front. So not a bad class as it relates to the players. But I think, again, I don't hindsight 2020, this is a lot of draft capital that we netted for sure. But I can understand why Cardinals fans would be like, we're still not going to be able to affect the quarterback, right? We're still not going to be able to get enough pressure on the quarterback. So, that talented secondary that they possess is going to struggle because of that. So, not bad, but certainly big miss in terms of edge for sure. All right. Good exercise though. Good exercise though. I'm probably going to do some fresh 7-round mock drafts for these 3 teams that go up on the main channel, Couch Potato General Manager. But do be sure to like and subscribe to the Second Half Draft Show. Again, this is where you will find our live stream content on Fridays, and I'm going to be streaming on Fridays leading up to the draft. Probably going to stream during the draft as well. So make sure you lock in. And as I just mentioned, um, we're gonna take this thing up to the 2026 draft, but there's not going to be any downtime. I'm ready to jump into 2027. I'm ready to really put our best foot forward because I think we've come up a little short here in 2026. But otherwise, good show this evening, Mr. C. Appreciate you tuning in. Yeah, this will be the channel for the live stream on Friday nights each time. So don't miss out. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.